The illustrious Jabba bids you welcome. I'm going to regret this.
I'm Pete Mitchell. He's Peyton Jones. And this is the Church Planter Podcast, brought to you by Church Planter Magazine. Hey, Church Planter, this is Pete Mitchell.
And this is Peyton Jones.
I almost had to restart the whole podcast all over again because of how I was going to just let it go right there. I was going to say something that would have caused us to have to restart the podcast.
Oh, man. I was about to say your friendly neighborhood church planter, man.
I was going to say, you know how, like, never mind.
Go on. Okay, never mind. Yes, never mind is a good place to leave. I was about to go, no, why tell me?
Well, it's just funny because then it actually wasn't bad. It's just, then you got to explain yourself, you know? Like,
hey, we got time, man. We got 30 minutes of smack talk to fill.
When one of us will call the other and we'll be like, what are you wearing? It was going to be along those lines. But then,
which my response is usually, I'm wearing a spicy little number today. I've got some sweatshorts and nothing as sexy as sweatshorts. You heard it from the Church Planter Podcast.
Everyone run out.
You want to impress your spouse, sweat shorts.
Everyone should just run out to Costco and get themselves some sweat shorts. You actually didn't hear my Nike Costco story.
Oh, let me hear it.
You know, here's the thing, guys. Actually, I don't think I can tell it to you because it hasn't aired yet on the From Concealment podcast, and that's really where it needs to air first. But it's a story about Costco, and obviously, From Concealment podcast, you can tell, you know, it's going to have a little something to do with some fun.
Oh, wait a second. You mean we now are second fiddle? Like we get the neck of the chicken on this podcast? We don't get the choice cuts of meat anymore? Is that where things have gone?
That's almost exactly what I was thinking. I'm glad you worded it the way that you did, because that's it.
I'm a master of words. I won't deny it.
Wait. This is exactly what I have to say about Church Planter Podcast.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.
Could you hear that?
I could. Could you?
No, but I'm
hearing voices. Are you?
See, it was funny.
Are you hearing the voices I'm hearing?
Are you hearing the voices in my head?
Remember, I trigger easy and I get jealous easy. You know, I am a jealous lover podcaster.
Well,
you know, I now hate Dan Sams. I can't help it. You did this to me.
Well,
I liked him before.
That's just kind of the way it goes, though.
Yeah. Only if I had ascension over him, though. Now that there's a new pecking order and a new sheriff in town, I don't like being the deputy. I'm just saying. No.
Well,
I ain't no deputy dog. I'm not your Huckleberry Hound.
Well, you know, all I can say is I finally have a podcast where people come up to me and go, hey, are you the guy from that podcast? No one has ever in the history of the Church Planter Podcast, 6+ years, ever said that to me. You will be at Legoland. And people will be like, hey, I recognize your voice. Are you from the Church Planter Podcast? Me, never happens.
Yeah. I think they think that both voices are Peyton Jones.
Until now. And now, Petey gets approached.
Tell me your story. Tell me your Andy Warhol 15 minutes of fame story. Where you got, excuse me, sir, are you the guy from the podcast?
Well, what happened? It happens when I go to the range, right? I go to the range. I'm doing one of my competitions. This last one I went to, I had 2 different people come up to me, and one guy goes, hey, are you the guy? Are you the guy from the podcast? I mean, I'm only wearing a hat that says From Concealment Podcast. So
that's rad.
That's my way of like putting up a big flag. Hey guys, it's me over here. Come say hi to me.
Is there not a lot of podcasts in that field?
No, there probably are.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I don't know. I don't go looking for gun
That's
podcasts.
cool, man. That's really cool.
I don't go looking for Church Planter podcast because I am the Church Planter podcast. I don't go looking for gun podcast because I am the gun podcast.
Do you remember that scene on Pee Wee Herman where at the very end she goes, "Come on, Pee Wee, let's go see the movie you're in," and he goes, "No, I lived it."
Dude, that's the story of my life right there.
Absolutely.
No, so this one guy goes, "Hey, you know a lot of, or no, you know a little bit about a lot of different things." And I go, "Actually, I think you might be talking about my co-host." And he goes, "Yeah, now that I hear your voice, that would make more sense."
That's hilarious. That's hilarious. Is that Dan?
Yeah, dude, Dan's way smarter than me. Are you kidding me?
That's rad. That's rad.
He's
pretty switched on dude, isn't he?
Oh, totally. I mean, it's like this podcast, only, he's the smart one, just like you're the smart one. I mean,
I didn't know.
I'm color commentary. That's my role in life, is to be color commentary.
I used to think that, you were the smart one and I was the good looking one, but I've seen you on Facebook lately, and Pete's looking good these days. I'm just saying.
I don't mean to brag or nothing, but
such love is forbidden. But I mean, I've looked a couple times at your profile picture. Too far?
Wow.
Too far. So, what I have noticed you doing is you are on. I got to tell you a story. I got a bad review this week. I'll tell you about that. We'll laugh and make fun of it. I'll tell you in a minute. But I've noticed you at Star Wars Land like on a very regular basis.
It's not really my desire. It's just, you want to hang out with the family and they want to go to Disneyland. So what are you going to do?
Is it just a little more of a happier place on Earth now that Star Wars Land is open?
I don't know that I can go that far.
Right.
But like
because you still have to go to all the other stupid places.
Well, last week when we went, it was my birthday. And so, the kids wanted to hang out with me. And well, thank you. Kids wanted to hang out with me. So it was like, all right, we'll go to Disneyland. But it was packed. Like everyone was there for all the Halloween decoration. And I was like, finally at one point, I'm like, all right, we're leaving. We're done. Petey birthday, and he's pulling the plug on this little trip.
You used to be the king on your birthday. You'd be like, you know what? I want Disneyland for 15 minutes, and after that, I'd like chicken and waffles on a pizza, and you get that.
So then we went on Smuggler's Run again with Luke and I did, and we went in the single rider line because the family, it was too long the other way. But here was the problem. So. And this is a hint for everyone who's going to do the single rider line with their kid. We were going through it, and I was like, all right, look, we're probably going to get separated because they were like packed, right? And so I'm like, you're going to go on a different one than me. So meet me and I said, meet me as soon as you get off the ride, the hallway there, just meet me there. The problem is there's so many of these, like they kick you out at different places. And I didn't realize that. And so he was starting to get freaked out because he went before me, and then I was like clear towards the exit, and so I had to go back through the tunnels to find him, and I found him, and he was cool then. And so I was like, all right, note to self for the future: we meet at the exit because you're just going to get lost in that place. But yeah,
No, poor guy.
No, I mean he didn't. I mean he held it together pretty good, but. You can see the moms were starting to like help him. Hey, where's your dad? And he's like, I'm waiting for my dad. My dad's coming for me. And, so.
Aw, dude. So that's my wife's thing is, she tells our kids, if you ever get separated from us, find a mom.
Find a mom?
You find a mom. Yeah.
That's a good answer. So, see, I never really thought of that, but yeah.
Yeah. Me neither. I think we forget we have kids sometimes as men. Oh yeah, kids. Oh, got to feed them. So when my wife goes away, she has to tell me like, don't forget to feed the dog. Don't forget to feed the cat. Because, they're not making a bunch of noise. I'm like, they're cool. So she always.
They're not making a bunch of noise.
Yeah, they're not like going around going, looking in the refrigerator or anything. They're always mopey because Andrea's gone. Because she's nurturing. She's mama. They love her. They're like, they look at me like Andrea leaves and they're like, wow. The cat walks around, crying. And when Andrea goes, they're all sad. When I leave, they're happy. They're not like, oh, they don't walk around crying.
That's like the story of my life.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I Nacho Libre, man. The other day I was in town and I saw this luchador and people were giving him lotions and goodies. I think I would like that kind of respect.
Organized crime.
Yeah, man. So, I got a review.
Yes, tell me about your review.
I'm revamping a curriculum that she'll remain nameless right now, but they did a review, and obviously there is someone out there going through this who is not a Peyton Jones fan, because when the review came back, there's a lot of really helpful comments, and people said nice things about some of the content I personally wrote, and but this one guy,
what is this about? Say this again.
It's church planning curriculum.
Okay,
and so they're beta testing this contract I've been on. And everybody was like, hey, this was great. And here's a tweak or a suggest, or I'd like more of this, normal, helpful. But there was one guy, it was like the Peyton Jones Defamation League. It was like, is there anything you found confusing? Yeah, Peyton Jones's articles. They're a bunch of fluff, no content.
Nice.
Then the next one, it goes, anything you would remove? The articles by Peyton Jones. So I showed it to my wife. I told her
that's the way people talk about me in this podcast. What would you get rid of? Pete Mitchell and Smack Talk?
Oh, that's what I woke up to this morning. So I had a little talk with God. I said, God, I think I know who it is too. And which makes it even funnier. But I was like, yeah, Lord, I think I'm going to need to lean into you today. Because I'm writing this textbook, and holy heck, dude, this textbook, I mean, if I ever felt out of my depth, it's writing this thing.
Yeah.
And but I'm not out of my depth. I'll have you. No, I'm teasing. No, it's just, it's a higher standard. Like I have had to dig deep, Pete. I've had to stretch myself. And I was reading this book last night. It's by a guy named Christopher B. James, and it's church planning and post modern soil. He does a lot of case studies of church plants in Seattle, and it's Oxford University Press. I'm reading this guy's book going, this is so good. And I interviewed him on the podcast just after I skimmed his book. But dude, I'm going into his book right now going, I can't write like this. Like, this is amazing stuff. So went to bed last night with a little bit of, wow, can I really pull this off? Only to wake up this morning with, yeah, Peyton sucks. So I had to go before the Lord and go, hey, Lord, you got this, right? We got this together. We got this. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
Watch
I understand that story all too well. I got to use that a lot.
What I do right now, though, is I take on like Dr. von Frankenstein. I take his approach. They laughed at me back in the laboratory. They said my ideas were crazy. One day I'll show them. I'll show them all.
They laughed at me in the laboratory, but what happened next will surprise even you.
That's when you put the marketing spin on. To learn my secrets, go to my free webinar. So, well, hey, that's all the smack I got. It was the smack against me, but we have. Hey, we're back to those today on a very special episode of the Church Planner Podcast,
or a hardcore church planning podcast. Depending on how you're doing this today.
Correct.
This is a special dual episode.
It is. It's like dueling banjos, but it's dueling podcasts. Today's episode is actually going to be played on our two podcasts. Part of the reason is we had another podcast. Church Planner Podcast is a proud father. We had a baby years ago. We had a baby podcast called the Hardcore Church Planning.
I'm really uncomfortable.
Can you hear the trash truck outside?
No.
Well, I can.
I want to be clear that I'm really uncomfortable that us two guys
We had a baby.
Like that. I'm putting this out there. That doesn't make me a proud papa.
I get it. I imagine a baby we would have though. If you and I went to one of those.
Seriously, why did you just say that line?
Okay, let me rephrase it. You and I go to the mall. We go to the kiosk where it says upload your picture, and we'll meld the pictures to see what a child would look like from your genes. How about that?
I don't know what kind of malls
There's no physical touching.
We go to completely different malls, apparently.
So you and Dan don't have these talks?
If we have a baby, no. Dan and I do not have those talks.
You're just not there yet in your relationship. You haven't started talking about kids or making a baby podcast yet. That'll come with time. You can't rush these things, Pete.
That's all I can say.
This may very well be the last episode of the Church Planner Podcast.
As well as Hardcore.
So, hey guys, what we're doing today is we're actually we're tying a bow on the end of church planner or hardcore church planting, because that's just kind of left there. But also, we thought it'd be good to just kind of catch up on each other's lives and see what we're doing, because a lot's changed since we started this podcast almost 7 years ago. It'll be 7 years in March, Pete.
Is it really? Are you sure?
Yeah. Yeah, 7. It was March.
Well, I mean, that's still 6 months away, so whatever.
I know, but that's pretty crazy. It's 5 months, I'll have you know, because my book's due March 15th. But yeah, man. So, I mean, you and I have, gosh, when we started this, you and I were planting in Long Beach, California. I love your story where like Peyton just assumed I was coming to the church plant. Like it wasn't, when he talked to me, it was like, oh, so I'll see you Sunday. And it was like, I never said I'm coming.
Well, you got to understand, man, my Sundays, that's the one day a week that I get to go do whatever I want without anyone. And so you were meeting Sunday evenings. So we already went to church in the morning. I'm like, dude, bro, I did church.
I never thought about that. We were meeting in the nights to train the core team. And
to get rid
that
of
was
the
your
core
movie
team.
time.
That was really what it was. You wanted to get rid of the core team and start over from scratch.
I did. I inherited a bunch of people I didn't want. So I tried to get rid of them.
Yeah. And then you tried to drag me into it. And then I was like, dude, come on.
Well, I'll never forget you and I. So we started the podcast. We went to, I think I went to Exponential. I don't think you were with me that year. And I had a table at Exponential, and I had Church Zero advertised there. I was giving away tons of free copies. I was advertising Andrea's website back then, which was Church Planning is for Girls.com. And, yeah, man, like it was pretty rad. Like it was funny because I had this really awesome card, and I would hand it out and I'd say, hey, your wife called. She says she needs support. And these guys look at me like, you're such a jerk, man. And then I'd hand them this card, and Church Zero, I had Mr. T on the table. I had a few weird action figures to advertise books. It was all stuck in the 80s. So I started a lot of conversation, but I also had stuff for the podcast set up. I may have had the banner, but you might have had that made later on. But I think I had a plaque that had the magazine advertised. I can't remember. And I was just promoting all the stuff that I was doing at that time. Like New Breed had it was kind of like the most confusing table on the planet. Had so much crap on it. But
and it had Mr.
But
T. So yeah, I'm sure it did confuse one or two people.
It had a Mr. T doll, but like everybody else just had like bowls of candy. People would be like, ha ha ha, Mr. T, what's that about? And I'd be like, dude, it's Mr. T, fool. But anyways, that was what birthed the church planner. Well, that's what was going on beyond. What birthed it was you were like, hey, do church planners have a magazine or something they can read? And I'm like, no, they don't actually. That's a fantastic idea. So that was your idea. We started this thing and, started a magazine, and it was pretty cool. And then Rick Warren's dudes asked us to come into their office. The infamous story where Pete had his TomTom tractor on that had the cougar voice, and she started talking in the middle of our meeting. Hey, big boy.
Looks like you're lost.
Looks like you're lost, Tiger. And Pete turns on a million shades of, he's fumbling. Where's that TomTom? It's in your bag.
Yeah,
and you're trying to turn it off. She's talking. It's totally inappropriate.
Yeah, that was pretty bad.
And of course there's me. We're with like Steve Gladden and some other guys that are all kind of well-known dudes that Rick had hired, and they were super cool. And they're like, hey, so what are you guys doing? And I don't know how to have business meetings, so I'm sitting in there and I go, hey, so what's this about? After like shooting the breeze for like 5, it was pretty much like me going, hey, let's cut to the chase. We don't have all day here. And, oh man, and then Exponential called up and said, hey, do you guys want to sell the magazine? Well, you can still work for us. And I go to you and I didn't know, like,
I don't even remember saying this. This is why it's so funny to me.
I go, hey, Pete, they want to buy the magazine. I go, how much you want to sell for? And do you want to sell it? They'll employ us. And you're like, no, I don't really want to sell, but tell them if they want, it's for sale. If they want $5 million. And you were being stupid. And I go back, I don't even remember this at all. Yeah. Pete says you can have it for $5 million. I don't know these things back then.
That's the funniest thing.
I'm a missionary. I'm fresh off I don't know what you Americans are doing. What's that?
The funniest thing to me is that that's what you passed on to them. Yeah, you
and
can
I
have
only told you this year.
I
only told you this year.
I know. I didn't even know this happened.
When we entered back into conversations with them about the magazine, only then did I go, we did offer, $5 million. Now we're trying, and the funny thing to me was now we're just giving it away, whereas the sticker price on it, and you go, $5 million? What are you talking about? So, anyways,
that's funny.
Yeah, could have been 500,000. I don't know. What's a few million, give or take. But the funny part is that I actually went back and talked to him, and this feels like this is your life more than hey, let's catch up and talk about what we're doing now. But I thought that would be a great little backstory, a little backup. But then over the years, a few Star Wars movies came out, so we have had a few special episodes. But Hardcore started because we decided that we wanted to interview people, and I was doing a really sucky job of hosting these interviews with you. Maybe you should talk about that.
Well, I think you did a fine job interviewing these guys, but the problem was you wanted. I don't know if you wanted to do it with me or that was just the intent. Was like, well, we do this other podcast together, so. You would tell me like 6 hours before we had to record, oh, by the way, we've got so-and-so coming on. This guy is incredible. He's huge. And these are his 15 books. I've read all of them. And this is his new one. It's fantastic. And we're going to ask him questions. And I'm like, I have no idea who this is. And so literally at the beginning, it was like, I would intro, just like I do this podcast. You would take over, ask some questions, and then I'd come on the end and go, hey, if you were to get in a fist fight with so-and-so, who would win? And I still remember Reuben Young coming up to me going, yeah, I totally forgot you were on that podcast until the very end when you asked the question. And it's like, okay, why am I even on this thing? I don't know who any of these people are. And then, to your credit,
stupid
at one point,
Reuben, he broke our podcast.
Yeah, that's it. It was Ruben's fault. I didn't feel like an idiot before Ruben said that.
No.
So,
man,
I just remember you would like text me all these questions and stuff. And like half the time, I didn't even understand your questions. I'm like, that's a word I've never read before. Now I got to go to a dictionary and look this word up. I'm like, are you kidding me? So, then I opted
it's
out.
an important issue. Infralapsarian and superlapsarianism. I
I'm
mean,
just
you
saying.
gotta work these things out.
I'm just saying. It doesn't
Dan
work
will
like
know.
that.
Dan Sams will know this.
So that's when I was like, that's it, man. I got to be done. I got to be off. It's yours.
Yeah. But, it was funny because we, remember we drove out somewhere to see Michael Cheshire. And he
That's
was
right, we
in,
did.
and that was one of my favorite interviews because it was in a restaurant and you could hear you could hear the espresso machine in the background, clanging the plates. I love that, man. I was like, I remember saying to you, I love doing an interview like this. This was rad. And they let us do it in the restaurant. We just
That was the
interviewed them at
beginning of the
table.
good, high quality interviews that we've become known for over the years.
That was actually a really good interview. That dude was amazing back in the day.
That was funny.
But I remember he's big. Like he was tall. But he slimmed down now, but he was on some medication that made him put on a ton of weight. And he had the biggest belly at that time. And I'll say it now because I saw him on Facebook recently. He didn't look like that. But he had such a big belly and it protruded. And we were standing in Yard House and we were waiting to go in. And I feel someone pushing me like from behind. He's got his belly pushed up against me. He's literally like crushing me into the wall. It might have even been the front podium when you're at the hostess desk. And he's like crushing me. And I look up and he's just looking down, smiling. He goes, "That's uncomfortable, huh?"
That's classic.
I thought, man, that is a first for me. Nobody's ever crushed me with their belly up against something.
So why don't we get into the meat and potatoes of what it is you're doing nowadays? And let everyone know where they can.
Well, we
hunt
had
down
some smack
themselves.
left over. I just thought we'd use that for smack a bit.
I told you the whole episode is smack. What you're doing is smack talk. So I don't think smack talk is going to end on this episode.
That is true, huh? This will be the eternal smack episode. That's what it shall forever be named. That is what you shall title it. The eternal smackness.
I think we did episodes for hardcore. Whatever season we left with, this will be the next season. It'll be the first episode, and it'll also be the end.
Yeah, this is kind of our swan song to all of you hardcore fans. Because, someone's going to look down there and go, oh, a new episode.
We only waited 6 months to put on another hardcore episode, so,
Well, because my interview shows, so to answer your question, my interviews now, well, this is interesting because this involves the Church Planner podcast as well. My interviews right now are actually going to Ministry Ninja, which is just like you had a podcast. You and Dan had a baby. Sorry, I had to go there. I and Andrea had a baby with Barry.
Why? Why?
Just because it makes you uncomfortable. It's the equivalent of me crushing you with my belly. I have short man syndrome. It's the only thing I can do. I have to crush people with my mind. But, so my interviews have been going on there. And we started this new podcast called Ministry Ninja, which, just because so many of our podcasts ended up becoming, we would get asked these questions that were like, hey, what's your take on this? And it would have nothing to do with church planning. So I was like, well, this is just becoming almost like a seminary, a little audible seminary. My throat's really messing with me today. Sorry about that. But, it's kind of like I'm just hitting ministry basics with so many of these guys that found themselves in the church planning scenario and they have zero ministry experience. Or they'll tell me, Peyton, I need to bone up on theology. So like we've got an episode on the Holy Spirit, kind of get deep on that. We, this last week we recorded one very similar to the one we did, but totally different at the same time. Similar topic. We talked, you and I, last week about what to do when you're stuck, when nothing's moving. On the Ministry Ninja, we talked about what to do with disappointment. So it wasn't the same, but it was similar. So, these topics, they transcend just church planning. If you took everything, and I don't think it always works as a two-way street, but anything you talk about in ministry will apply to church planning. But anything you tell a church planner to do, you ought to be telling a minister to do as well. Because I would say that ministers need church planning advice more than church planners need ministry advice. But I can't prove or qualify that in any way. It's just my opinions. I have them. But yeah, so that's one of the things I've been doing. The other podcast that I can't really call it a podcast yet, but I've started doing more work with Chris Langham, who took over Refuge Long Beach, took the leadership of the team. He runs an app called Through the Word. And right now I've recorded from, I did Leviticus, which even that was in the podcast in the early days, we would talk about that because Chris was like, hey, will you do a book for me? And I said, okay, I'll do Leviticus. That's my favorite Old Testament book. And still to this day, Chris says he gets more comments on that freaking book than any other because people just can't get through Leviticus and they're listening to it and they'll tell him like, this is incredible. This book is just cracked open to me. So I signed a contract with Through the Word that I would do 12 chapters a month. And so I'm working now. I started with Deuteronomy, did all Deuteronomy. It's like 50 chapters. Did and then so I'm like 75 chapters in plus.
We lost you after Deuteronomy. What did you say after Deuteronomy?
What's that?
We lost you after Deuteronomy. What did you do after Deuteronomy?
Oh, after Deuteronomy, you lost me. Did I break up?
Yeah.
So after Deuteronomy, I did Joshua, which is another 25 chapters. So I'm about 75 chapters in. And then I did, I'm working on Judges now. And I'll take that all the way through to 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel. And I mean, these are hefty books. So this is my next year, year and something actually in this thing. So, and then eventually what'll happen is I'll go back through on my own. Once I finish the textbook, I'll do Genesis, Exodus, and then Numbers. And then I'll have a complete catalog of these 8-minute chapter summaries of every chapter in the Bible from Genesis to 2 Samuel, which is quite hefty. So, I mean, I'll start a podcast once I get there to basically say, well, let's start a podcast and do I'll call that one Bible Ninja.
You'll call it what?
Bible Ninja.
Oh my gosh.
Hiya!
Bible Ninja Jump School.
Hey, you gotta give me credit. I didn't call it Jump School Bible or Bible Jump School. That's
true.
So yeah, man.
Should have been obvious. You're right.
Those are my Audible offerings at the moment. That's just keeping me busy on podcasts and whatnots. So yeah. What about you, my friend? What's going on in your audio?
In my audio world?
Yeah.
So
because I'm gonna, you know me, I'm gonna go through audio, video, and then written.
So I'm doing. I've got 3 podcasts right now. I've got obviously Church Planner Podcast, which is my first love, and then I've got a child
now
that
you
I
say
had with Dan
Does
Sams.
it hurt to say I love you sometimes?
Yes. Yes. Actually, it does.
Very much so. It might hurt me too. Actually, I think this relationship is working as it is.
I love you, man.
So, the other 2 podcasts I've got are obviously the From Concealment podcast, which is all about firearms, firearm accessories, shooting, competing, carrying, and I do that with church planner Dan Sams. Interestingly enough, man, I love the fact that I'm doing it with Dan because Dan is he's a gun enthusiast, shall we say, but a hardcore pastor in that he never in any way shrinks away from a chance to promote Jesus. on the podcast. And I love that about it because I know our audience for that is not going to be Christians.
Oh, I love that, dude. That's so cool.
Yeah. Like this last episode, I was listening to what came out last Monday, and it was about suicide and firearms. And like even the way he handled it, man, it was awesome. It was really, really good.
That one would be awesome, dude. I would love to hear that because I remember you either posted something or you might have just dropped something in conversation where you were like, hey, it's not, the statistics on this will actually surprise you. Because that's a major concern I have is, hey, does that open up the door? I've had 2 friends that have shot themselves and ended their lives. So that's obviously a very real concern.
The brief summary is I picked up a magazine that had reported all the study, and they looked at high income countries. And those are the numbers that they were looking at. So it wasn't just, countries in the world. It was like, okay, let's look at basically high income countries, Japan, Australia, America, Canada, Israel, that type of country, Germany. And what they found was that, yes, America has basically 6.9 out of every 100,000 people commit suicide by firearm in the United States. And that's higher than any other country, but that's because we have more guns. When you look at, this is what kind of surprised me, is it was a very fair study that they did, because they said, okay, let's also look at non-firearm suicides. And we had 6.9 for that. So we're at 13.8 out of every 100,000 people are killing themselves. And that's actually about normal. I mean, there were countries that were significantly higher, like Slovenia, I think it was at 18.9 or maybe even 20. And we're at 13.8. So, I mean, we were way under that. But there weren't too many that were lower. We're kind of like middle of the pack. But ours, yes, it is higher in firearms. But the thing is, when you look at the numbers, okay, the amount of people are the same who are doing it basically worldwide, is essentially what it comes down to. So it's just the ease of it. When they have a firearm, they choose to go that way. So if someone's going to kill themselves, they're going to do whatever is easiest for them to do. And if they have access to the firearm, they are going to use it. That's why if someone is suicidal, then if you can get the firearms away from them, absolutely, right? Because if it's harder for them to do it, that's better. But the problem
the irony, Pete, is that, we talk about, like, I have this concern, about a gun, but I have this ginormous bullet that goes past my house like multiple times a day. And it's an issue here that a lot of, like, my daughter.
He's talking about his train, by the way, guys. It's not somebody out there with a gun shooting by the side of his house.
No, there's like a giant bullet, like a multiple megatons of machinery that just goes through my, goes practically through my backyard every day if I wanted to consider it. And that is a chosen way here in these beach communities in San Diego County. People just to step onto the tracks and boom,
Yeah.
So
that's because they did a really interesting statistic that they looked at with Israel. So Israel has one of the lowest suicide rates as a country, and they have very easy access to guns in Israel. But one of the things that they did was that they took away, if you were between the ages, I want to say 18 and 21, and you were in the military, which you basically, if you're in Israel, you have to go into the military when you're 18. They took away their firearms when they went out on weekend leave. And that cut suicides in Israel by 40%. And that 40% was almost 100% because of suicides that happened on the weekend. So it's the access, right? I mean, if you have access to it, and I'll also think about it, they weren't happening as much during the week. Why? Because that's when they're with everybody. That's when they're with their friends. But they go home on the weekend, depression sets in, whatever. They got access to the firearm. They were doing it.
Right.
So, and the only thing that I like, it's really good because Dan and I both go into this a lot more in depth than we can go into here on this podcast.
Yeah, sure.
But I don't think
this become the From Concealment podcast.
Right, I know, right? That'd be so awesome. My worlds are colliding. My worlds are colliding. But like the problem is you can't just look and say, if we take away guns, then suicide goes away, because it doesn't. Because what these other countries bear out is no, they just find another way. So I think there's probably a knee-jerk reaction in a country when you have, like in the case of Israel, a huge numbers of suicides go down because of you took away their firearm. And then I think what you're going to see is then it comes back up, because then people go, okay, well, this is just not the way I can do it. Right. So I think there's a knee-jerk reaction to it. Right. Because the numbers, I mean, it doesn't matter. Like, yes, there are countries that are much higher than us, and Israel is the lowest. And then, a few of them, like Japan was actually really high. Japan has like no guns, but they had like 18 out of every 100,000 people are killing themselves.
Trains, again.
Is that what they're using? Trains?
Yeah. They use subways.
There's a deeper problem, as we know, as Christians, there's a deeper problem going on. It's not the firearm, that's the tool. And if you give someone easy access to a tool who already has this other core problem, there's an issue, and they're going to act on it. So
real quick, what's your other podcast?
The third one is called Contractor's Secret Weapon. I do that one with Dave Negri. He's actually a elder at his church in Florida. I've known him for years. He's been a client of mine, and we've worked together on many projects. And it's for basically people who are in the housing market as contractors, so roofers, painters, cleaners, plumbers. That's where the contractors part comes in, and it's a marketing podcast that we do for those guys. So we do that obviously because we hunt out of that for more business. And then I'm starting a fourth podcast, which hasn't started yet. I was going to call it something like, the Profit Hacking Podcast or Profit Hacker, because that's the name of my company. Then I was at this meeting this last week, and this guy had just a great name. And so I approached him. I'm like, man, I kind of want that. So I don't know if he'll let me use it or not, but his name was Winners Always Win.
I think I would like to have it. You must give it to me.
Yeah, he bought Winners Always Win .com, and I was like, not Winners Always Win. Winners Always Find a Way, or winnersfindways.com. Winnersfindways.com.
You got to call yours Winners Gonna Win.
Actually, I found
haters gonna hate.
I found Winners Always Find Ways, but his was Winners Find Ways. And then I was like, dude, I don't want to step on your toes. Can I use Winners Always Find Ways? And he goes, yeah, you can use that. Just give me credit. I'm like, all right. So, but then he's like, I'm not sure. Maybe I should just give it to you. Winners Find Ways. I'm like, yes, give me Winners Find Ways.
That's cool.
He hasn't done it yet. He hasn't said he's going to do it.
He's thinking like a winner. That's cool. He's generous. That's awesome.
He's a very generous
real quick
person. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. So tying back into our podcast, the greatest podcast of all time, Church Planner Podcast, not lesser in any way,
and not number 2 according to Outreach Magazine or whoever that was.
yes, not number 2. So here's the thing: is you and I have actually, the hardcore is ending. Has ended. We're just announcing it 6 months later. Hardcore church planning is dead. It's been confirmed. It is dead. So, but we're going to bring interviews back onto this podcast. But this time we're going to be better. I'll just own it. I will be better about the podcast and who we schedule. I am currently trying to get Chuck Swindoll, believe it or not. So
can we call him Chucky? Can we call him Chucky on the podcast?
Chuckles. We'll call him Chuckles. They're going to listen because they're checking us out to see if he can come on. And they're going to listen to this and say, no. So if Chuckles does not make it on, that is why. So, nice. But no, to me, he is, you will not find a better communicator of this. I mean, he's amazing, right? That dude's just amazing. And it's funny because you'll find guys go, no, Tim Keller, like guys that are super into exegesis. That dude can exegete. There's amazing dudes out there. There's Alistair Begg, but Chuck Swindoll is a freaking legend. And so would be Alistair Begg. And I wish we had gotten Warren Wiersbe before he died. In fact, the week he died, I was like, this alarm bell went off in my head. You need to get Warren Wiersbe on. And I had been ignoring that. And this alarm bell went off and he died like the next day, maybe 2 days later. And I was like, dang, I knew it. So something was telling me he was getting ready to go. But anyway, so we will bring interviews back on. So okay, let me skip to video and then I'll go to written content. In the video realm, I've got so I rebranded my website, right? I took it away from PeytonJones.ninja and I called it Ministry Ninja. Part of the reason was I wanted to really go this route of talking about church planting ninjas. Could not find a publisher for that concept. I could actually. Zondervan said, we'll take it, but you got to take the word ninja out of it. And the concept is so fully formed. The book was almost completely, I'd say it was about 85%, 90% written. And it used all ninja. I had worked so hard on this thing for about 2 years. And I just pulled it back off the table and said, no, I'm not gonna change this. You know, it is what it is, and it will see the light of day. I'll hold it off for now. And I'm probably going to make it into a course because I've been making courses. But anyways, I took my website, rebranded it to ministryninja.com. And that's where you'll find my podcasts, my books, my video. But the video is the stuff that I'm really excited to start moving into. If you guys have not checked out Ministry Ninja, that's my YouTube channel. You could subscribe right now. I only have like 200 and I think like 70 something subscribers. So it's not anything to boast of. I mean, it's early days for me yet. Have not been super intentional, but I just started we always joke around, Pete, how we're not the church planner, money guys. We're the non-math pastor. You're actually not. I am though. So, I met up with ECCU. They wanted to know, hey, talk to us a little bit about church planners. We're a bank and we've served churches, but we kind of want to be relevant to this next generation of leaders, and we want to help church planners. And when I met with them, one of their senior leaders, the CEO, he actually, while we were talking, he started crying, and he's like, "Look, I just left." He had worked for some really big companies, and he's like, I just left the secular business world to come help this church out because I believe that we can really impact for the kingdom. And when he started tearing up, he was talking about reaching lost people. And he goes, and I just get that church planners are going to do that faster than anyone. When he did that, I was like, I need to work with these guys. This guy is awesome. And the guy that I'm doing a lot of the interviews with, I was his youth pastor back in the day. He was the one that said, oh, you need to talk to Peyton Jones, get him in the room. And so I met with these guys for a couple days, had a great chat with them, enjoyed, hearing what they want to do. And I just said, you need to make it free to planners. And so they said, what else? I said, you need to create like a step-by-step, like we're holding their hand. And you're walking them through all this crap because they don't have time. They're bivocational. And I described everything and they went and did it. Like they executed an amazing program for church planners starting out. And they're like, cool, we'll waive all the fees for 2 years. We'll do this. We'll do that. We'll create a concierge service for church planners. It's pretty rad. So anyways, but what we did is we put together this 52 episode breakdown of pretty much like the dummy's guide to church planning finances. And that's in 52 episodes. They're maximum 5 minutes each. And it's literally me and somebody from ECCU sitting down, and they're moving the people around from different departments. I've usually got like 10 episodes with one person. And it's asking them, as everyone who listens to this podcast knows, the stupid financial questions that I don't know. Over the years, I've had to get to know stuff, but even just, hearing like one of the guys early on was Kurt Blake, and I remember meeting with Kurt for Refuge and saying, dude, show me how to do a budget, even for New Breed, the church planning network I run. I'm like, dude, I need to know how to run a budget. I've never done that. I just know that you don't spend all your money. You save it for strategic purposes for the kingdom, and you don't take a full paycheck. And that's what I've learned in church planning. And he was like, oh, he's like, wow, man, no. He's like, you got to know this, that, and that, and that. And so that's what it is. It's kind of like, to me, because I told the guys, I was like, look, nobody's done this. So if you really want to reach church planners, talk to them about this stuff. Let's make it accessible. So that's what I'm doing in the YouTube world. I got my other shows on there too, but yeah, it's church planning and money is the name of it.
Cool.
Yeah. Are you doing anything with video wise?
I am, but interestingly enough, it's going to be for my Winners Find Ways, whatever I end up calling that podcast. I'll be doing the podcast episodes, and then I'm going to be doing basically a 1 to 4 minute video summary that I'll be posting on Facebook.
Cool.
Using
and we're going to do that for this too, right? Like our new
do it for everything.
Yeah, man, coming up, because I want to do that too. Teach me, Sensei.
Yeah, I'm going to do that to promote it and get more people to basically tune into the podcast, subscribe to my list, all that stuff. So then,
so what you guys will see us doing occasionally is, let's say we've had an interview, we'll get on there and we'll say, hey, this is the great takeaway, boom, boom, boom. Not that you don't listen to the podcast, you go back and we'll just give you a tidbit, but you will start seeing us popping up on Facebook.
It's a taster. It's kind of like watching the movie trailer.
An aperitif, if you will.
If you watch the movie trailer, you don't get the whole movie. But
a little moose bouche beat from the podcast. Would you like a moose bouche?
Yeah, so that's what I'm going to do for
yes.
For video.
It will be like we're walking around the party with a platter. Would you like a shrimp cracker? Something like that. I don't know why I'm doing these voices.
Me neither.
What's up with me? I need to go on timeout.
Probably.
What's up? So anyway, so that's it. And then written content. So I will be, I haven't posted blogs now for a few months. I've been writing curriculum like a bad boy. I wrote the Jump School core team training. I thought I'd pause it there so you could comment.
Yeah.
So I wrote that content. That's a 6-month training. I don't want this to be a big commercial, so I just tell you it's there. It's at Ministry Ninja. You can check it out. But it's a core team. You can lead it from your iPad. It's got videos that shoot to your TV, yada yada. It's got the whole night broken down. Like, this is a passion project for me. Like, literally 6 months, how I train core teams, and even how I've trained them in the past, but even better, it's how I would do it now, knowing what I knew even after Refuge Long Beach. This is what I would do next time around. And it's got a little bit of field exercises. You can take your people out into the community at a certain point. It's got week 17 as a retreat. That's all guided there. So it's literally like a plug and play. And then I created 2 more pieces of training. One is, it's, right now I'm just calling it Train Like Jesus. We call it, you come to San Diego, we call it Train Station. You come, you learn to train like Jesus. How did Jesus train the apostles? So you come, and I'm going to train you to train others, right? So some people call it like a train the trainer. Then, but it's all based on how Jesus trained, and I'm gonna teach you the transformational principles of training others. Then the last one is something called Citywide, which is network training, and what that is you come together in a cohort of 12. The ideal is that you form 3 to 4 church planting teams rather than 12 planters shooting out in 12 separate directions. In Citywide, you come together, you plant, you form teams in the cohort. The cohort meets for a year, and every other week is field training, which I'm more excited about that than anything else. And then the other thing is, again, it's APEST. Church planting teams, which nobody trains for you to plant in that model. And so after writing Church Zero, cha-ching, people were like, hey, how do I do this? So this is training the planter, right? And in order to train citywide, you need to, you have to come through the Train Like Jesus, because you won't be able to train it. You can't just read the instruct, like you have to know how to use these techniques. And so that's what I'm doing there. And so I've been really busy, but now I got 5 months ahead of me to just become a punk monk, close myself in my new office, and write a textbook, which is coming out with Zondervan. I have no idea what the title will be, but it is very much a first century style church planning textbook or manual. And I asked them, I said, hey, I don't know if I'm going to be good at writing a textbook. They're like, no, we know who you are. Stay who you are in the book, but just, keep up the academic job. So that's what I'm doing, man. So, and you'll see blogs. I'll share little snippets of it on ministryninja.com. And, but yeah, you guys can pray for me on that. So if I come out an egghead, you know why, because I'm reading all these eggheads right now, but I'm super excited, man. This is going to be a tome on church planning. So
cool.
I know written's not your thing, Pete, but you got anything that you're working on?
No,
Any
I don't have another book yet that I'm ready to announce. And if I do, it'll be marketing related.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Well, you know what happens when you write stuff? People say, yeah, get rid of that Peyton Jones guy. Cut his articles. They're stupid. They're fluff. Well, hey,
I've never admitted to being anything other than fluff. So,
that's a good philosophy. It's funny, man, because I don't think I'm a great writer by any stretch of the imagination, but
I don't think anyone thinks you're a great writer by any stretch of the imagination.
Well, that's it. But, you at least try to be helpful. When someone comes up and just goes, I think it was a bunch of fluff. You're like, okay, that's you. That's not me. Because you weren't even, there's a kinder way to say that. But, I'm just kind of like, yeah, all right. But I think you got to be a writer too. I read something with Seth Godin recently where he posted one of his horrible reviews, and it was funny as heck to read it. Because, Seth's a rad writer. So, but anyways, hey, man. So, hey, we're going to wrap up because we're out of time. But that's what we have been doing. And we want to thank you guys for all the years of listening to hardcore church planning. And it is time that this baby grows up and flies away. And in the meantime, we're going to continue with this podcast. There will be some changes coming, as we talked about. But Pete and I got through our existential crisis, and we're pretty sure we know where we're headed next. And there's good things coming for this podcast. So thanks for sticking around and letting us do a very special episode of the Church Planner / Hardcore Church Planning Podcast. Any final words, Pete?
Hey, if you want to reach the ones that nobody's reaching, you got to go where nobody's going and do what nobody's doing. I always wanted to do it.
Different.
I always wanted to do it.
Different.
I always wanted to do it.
Hey, Pete, if Hardcore Church Planning and Church Planner Podcast were getting a physical fist fight, who would win?
Church Planner Podcast.
It totally would. You're right.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for joining us today. And Pete said it all.
Thanks for joining us for another weekly episode of the Church Planner Podcast with Pete Mitchell and Peyton Jones. We'd love to hear your comments on this episode of the Church Planner Podcast. Visit us online and let us know what you thought at churchplannerpodcast.com. If you subscribe to us via iTunes and have enjoyed the podcast, leave us a positive review. The more positive reviews we receive in iTunes, the more iTunes will promote us to other church planners who would benefit from this show. This podcast is brought to you by the Church Planner Magazine, which is available in the iTunes newsstand or online via churchplannermagazine.com.